Hello and welcome to Intelligent Pod, the show where we unravel complex ideas, explore the big questions shaping our future, and make them accessible to everyone. I'm your host, Sophie Lane, and today we're diving into a topic that's as exciting as it is controversial: the ethics of genetic engineering. Whether you're a science enthusiast, a curious skeptic, or just someone who wants to understand what all the fuss is about with CRISPR and designer babies, you're in the right place. So let's get into it. What exactly is genetic engineering? In the simplest terms, it's the deliberate modification of an organism's genetic material, its DNA, using biotechnology. This can mean anything from making tomatoes that last longer on the shelf, to treating genetic diseases, to the possibility of editing human embryos for specific traits. It sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel, but as of 2024, this is very much our reality. To ground us in just how far we've come, here's a quick fact. In 2018, a Chinese scientist, He Jiankui, announced the birth of the first gene-edited babies. He used CRISPR technology to alter the embryo's DNA, aiming to make them resistant to HIV. The global reaction was swift and loud, ranging from awe to outrage. This wasn't just a scientific milestone, it was an ethical earthquake. Let's start by breaking down why genetic engineering matters. On one hand, it holds the promise of curing diseases that have plagued humanity for centuries. Think about conditions like cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, or Huntington's disease. Genetic engineering offers the tantalizing possibility of erasing these illnesses from future generations. The appeal is obvious: less suffering, longer lives, healthier people. But there's another side to the story. What if we start editing for non-medical traits, like intelligence, athleticism, or physical appearance? Where do we draw the line between therapy and enhancement? And who gets to decide what traits are desirable? Suddenly, we're not just talking about health. We're talking about values, fairness, and what it means to be human. Let's look at this from a few different perspectives, because the ethics of genetic engineering is a tapestry woven from many threads. First, the scientific perspective. From the lab bench, gene editing is an incredible tool. Scientists have already used CRISPR to create crops that resist pests without chemical pesticides, which could mean more sustainable agriculture and less hunger. In medicine, clinical trials are underway for gene therapies that may one day cure inherited blindness or certain cancers. The potential for good is enormous. But scientists are also acutely aware of the risks. There's the possibility of unintended consequences. Editing one gene can sometimes cause unexpected changes elsewhere in the genome. There's also the issue of consent. Editing the genes of embryos means making irreversible changes for future generations, who obviously can't consent to those changes. Let's switch gears and talk about the psychological perspective. Imagine you're a parent, and you're told it's possible to ensure your child won't inherit a life-threatening genetic disease. The emotional pull to go ahead with that intervention is powerful. But what about the pressure to enhance your child's abilities just because it's possible? Could this lead to a kind of genetic arms race, where parents feel compelled to give their kids every possible advantage? Psychologists warn about the toll this could take on children, on their sense of identity, their self-esteem, and their relationships with parents. Now, let's add a cultural layer. Different societies have different values, and these shape how genetic engineering is viewed. For example, in some countries, there's a strong emphasis on collective well-being, which might lead to more acceptance of genetic interventions for public health. In others, individual rights and religious beliefs can lead to deep skepticism or outright bans. There's also the risk of exacerbating social inequalities. Imagine a world where only the wealthy can afford genetic enhancements for their children. Would we be creating a new kind of genetic class system? Let's bring in a real-life study to put some of these ideas in context. In 2020, a survey published in Nature Biotechnology asked people from 10 different countries how they felt about gene editing in humans. The results were fascinating. While most people supported gene editing for treating serious diseases, support dropped sharply when it came to enhancing traits like intelligence or appearance. This suggests that globally, there's a consensus that healing is good, but enhancing is much more controversial. I want to share a quick anecdote that really stuck with me. A few years ago, I met a family whose child was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. They told me about the roller coaster of emotions, fear, hope, anxiety, when they learned about a clinical trial for a gene therapy. For them, the ethical question wasn't abstract. It was about their child's life. They weighed the risks, the unknowns, and ultimately decided to participate. The treatment worked, and their child's life was transformed. Their story is a powerful reminder that behind every ethical debate are real people facing impossible choices. So, what can we take away from all this? First, genetic engineering is here to stay. The technology will only get more powerful and more precise. But the ethical questions aren't going anywhere either. They're only going to get more urgent. If you're wondering what you personally can do with all this information, let me offer a few actionable suggestions. First, stay informed. This field is moving fast, and it's easy to get swept up in headlines. Make a habit of checking reputable sources for updates, places like the World Health Organization, Nature, or Scientific American. Second, engage in conversations. These aren't just theoretical debates. They're decisions that will affect all of us. Talk to your friends, your family, your community. Ask questions like, what values do we want to uphold? What risks are we willing to accept? Third, let your voice be heard. Policy decisions about genetic engineering are happening now, and public input matters. Whether it's supporting regulations, participating in forums, or just voting, your perspective is important. And finally, approach this topic with empathy. Remember that for many people, genetic engineering isn't about abstract ethics. It's about real lives and real hopes. Whether you're for or against certain applications, try to see the human side in every story. Let's recap. Today we explored the ethics of genetic engineering from scientific, psychological, and cultural standpoints. We looked at the promise and the peril, the hopes and the fears. And we reminded ourselves that while the technology is dazzling, the ethical questions are deeply human. As we look to a future shaped by genetic engineering, let's keep asking the hard questions. Let's keep listening to each other. And let's keep striving for a world where science serves the common good. Thank you so much for joining me on Intelligent Pod today. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to leave a review. It really helps others find the show. For show notes, links to the studies I mentioned, and more resources, head over to intelligentpod.com. And if you have thoughts, feedback, or just want to say hi, you can always email me at sophie@intelligentpod.com. Until next time, stay curious and keep thinking intelligently. I'm Sophie Lane, and this is Intelligent Pod.